going? Welcome to the Spooky Sunday. Still kind of recovering from the cold, but I'm almost here. Hey, what's up? You guys doing good this evening? So I've made my little cube for tonight. So it's ready to go. Ready to play, ready to go.
This diamond is only one of a series.
So why don't we go ahead and Get into that. Yeah. Here we go.
A fair warning, this video regards a horror game, and it will feature some creepy sounds. It will not contain any jump scares though, I promise. This is best experienced through headphones. Hello, and welcome. This educational video is designed to show you how a horror game and its soundscape can intensify each other. Any other effects this video imparts are beyond the liability of Fazbear Entertainment. Now you may be wondering, what is sound intensity? How does it work? How can it keep me safe from any malfunctioning equipment in my business establishment? Rest assured, the Five Nights at Freddy's series can answer the first two questions. Due to budgetary considerations, and certainly not due to supernatural threats, this video will only be covering FNAF 2, 3, 4, Sister Location, and Pizzeria Simulator. But it should be noted that sound intensity occurs in all horror games. In fact, it occurs everywhere. There is no escape from experience. And without further ado, let's hand it off to our guide, Scruffy, who needs to deliver a concise review of sound intensity in the aforementioned games, if they wish to ward off the animatronics approaching the studio.
Wait, that wasn't in
Remember
rehearsal.
to keep your eyes and ears peeled,
No,
and
hey-
from all of us at Fazbear Entertainment, good luck.
Well, approaching the studio? Okay. I'm Scruffy, and today we gotta get right into it. Sound intensity. It's a very subjective concept about how much tension a sound raises. It's not as quantifiable as sound volume, nor even as agreed upon as sound velocity, which is the rough amount of force with which something is activated to create a sound. Though, generally speaking, louder, more forceful sounds are more likely to be intense. But there are also cases where softer sounds can be intense. For instance, someone yelling into a pillow. It's also intense, perhaps because the sound raises questions. Where's that yelling coming from? Who's yelling? Why is it muffled? Or sounds can become intense by association, which means each person can find different sounds intense. But there are sometimes popular sounds like... yeah, like that a great deal of people have come to associate with rising tension for a sudden jump. And it's precisely this sort of stress that can be exploited in a horror game to make the player feel more uneasy. So let me share some examples that this handful of FNAF games do well. These aren't exclusive examples, they're done well in other horror games that I'll want to talk about later. And there's no story spoilers here, but it'd be good to know the gist of gameplay experience as we go through each game. So, let's begin with FNAF 2, Unknown Drones. Sounds are easily intense when we don't know what their source is, whether we can't locate the sound or we haven't heard that kind of sound before. FNAF 2 gets pretty intense already just through pure gameplay, but in the slower moments of the game where you have little to no control, a slew of untraceable sounds intensify the experience. If any animatronics are in your office primed to attack you, you get this TV static in your ears. Where is that coming from? If the puppet's music box isn't kept wound and it escapes and is set to attack you, you literally hear the Jack-in-the-Box jingle anywhere you look. How is it doing that? You can even confirm the location of one animatronic, Mangle, by the radio static it's constantly emitting. Sure, but why does it have to make such a garbled, incongruous sound? And then, personally, the creepiest for me are these interactive cutscenes between the nights of gameplay, where you are inexplicably given the perspective of Freddy Fazbear, on stage with Bonnie and Chica. Visually, not much is going on, but once we add the audio... I don't know what's making that collection of sounds, I don't know where they're coming from, I don't know whether they're real or hallucinatory. While I'm playing, my guess is as good as yours. That is effective sound intensity. Now, a related case of unknown sound is when we do recognize the sound, but it's indicating something that we haven't or can't immediately confirm. This is why alarms are intense. When we hear an alarm before confirming that time has passed. When we hear an alarm before we know that there's smoke in a room, or that a car has been jacked, or that a message is so important that all televisions need to broadcast it simultaneously. Alarms earn their intensity by association, which is why this alarm becomes intense in FNAF 2 initially. It indicates that an animatronic is in the vents, and you'd probably hear it before you confirm it. Yep, there they are. We need to move on. FNAF 3. Context is everything. So, this sequel generally scales things back from FNAF 2. You're now only dealing with one real animatronic instead of at least 10. And though the sound design follows in the footsteps of FNAF 2, I'd argue the intensity is a bit scaled back as well. You have some alarm sounds that definitely raise questions the first time you hear them, and there's another cool between-night interactive cutscene where you explore an Atari-esque rendering of a pizzeria, once again playing as Freddy and the gang, but with more incongruous audio of thunder and strange, quiet rustling. But
Sorry, I had
again,
to
I'd
mute.
argue
I
it's
was,
not as
talking to the
immediately
kid.
intense. This game's a little more reserved about creating auditory stress. And there's an interesting shared sound effect between it and FNAF 2. This is actually an example of de-intensifying a sound. So, back in FNAF 2, we have one animatronic, Balloon Boy, who will eventually try and get into your office to sap your flashlight power. Pretty sure we're safe for right now, but when he does move, it comes with little utterances like these.
Hi. Hello.
And that's really off-putting initially. This
Yeah.
human voice is suddenly coming from somewhere. That's intense enough. Yet, go over to FNAF 3, and now these Balloon Boy sounds are actually in your toolset to help you. You can play these sounds in a specific room, and the animatronic you're warding off, Springtrap, will get coaxed to go there, thinking there's someone in there. It's one way to keep Springtrap away from your office. And by all means, this was just a game dev decision. It's easier to reuse sounds from a previous title. But by recontextualizing them, these sounds are no longer intense. They are positive feedback for your actions, and we now know exactly where this sound is coming from and why. Now it would be more intense not to hear them when you press this button. Isn't it funny how it works like that?
Yeah.
Oh dear. While I reboot this, let's move on to FNAF 4. Food tastes stronger when you're hungry. Strange subtitle, I know, but in the same way that taste is intensified when we perceive a lack of food,
stand by for the
hearing
messages.
gets
Okay, good.
intensified when we perceive
good.
a lack of sound. FNAF 4 takes place in a child's bedroom at night, and while it's never silent in there, it is remarkably quieter than the previous games in the series. There's a fan in this room, but unlike the previous games, it isn't running, and you have some low, ominous droning, some grandfather clock chimes in the distance, and the sound you're told to listen for: breathing. Yes, if you hear breathing when you check a door, you are to close it to stop the animatronic from attacking you right there. But breathing is quiet. The breathing that indicates an animatronic is inches away rises only a little above the ambient noise of the room. And so, in a playthrough of FNAF 4, you have to parse sounds very granularly. Your ear is searching for small differences in volume,
And then it
which makes
blows
any
your
difference in volume
eardrums
become
out
more
with a
intense.
loud monster
And might I
noise.
add, that's only when you're checking the doors. In other
Jump
parts of the
scare.
room, there are different non-audio mechanisms for warding off animatronics. Not to mention, this setting has some of the lowest light so far in the series, so you clamor for visual information as well. In my previous video about Five Nights at Freddy's, I referred to this as absence of information, when the player knows that something's being withheld from them. But it's not exactly withheld information, it's just faint information that takes focus to absorb and corroborate into a plan. And with so many tasks to juggle, focusing on minuscule sounds and details is intense, stressful even. Oh, I heard that. We should move along to FNAF Sister Location, Narrative Dissonance. First of all, this game is a smorgasbord of everything we talked about so far. You have weird, unknown sounds all over the place. You have some sounds that would be intense, except that they're given into your control, and thus you miss them when they aren't present. And you have one environment, the Ballora Gallery, in which you must traverse a pitch-black room while listening out for a quiet ballerina music box, indicating that the animatronic Ballora is nearby. So, with all of that present, I wanted to touch on something a little different in this game since it's so focused on narrators. FNAF 4 was the first in the series with no vocal narrator. Before that, Scott Cawthon himself was reading voice clips over the phone in every game. But in Sister Location, you have two new AI narrators who guide you through the game, telling you your next tasks and how to perform them. And perhaps their literal narration experiences some glitches here and there, but a more postmodern way to intensify this narration is to add narrative dissonance, where what is being narrated does not match what is happening in the story. There's some great exchanges where the hand unit narrator will have you check for the animatronic circus baby using a light, and even though she isn't on her stage, the narrator believes she is, and events continue. Rather than a specific sound, it's language this time that makes you aware that things aren't as they seem, and thus the general arc of the game gets more intense. There's later a moment where Circus Baby will start talking to you, and she will say things in direct conflict with the previous narrator's instructions. Again, when the game raises more and more unconfirmable questions this way, the whole experience becomes more intense. This game was also significant in the series for having an original soundtrack, rather than using stock music, and the game's composer, Leon Riskin, worked some narrative dissonance into the music. Most of the time you spend playing has no music, and some of the most dramatic or plot-heavy moments will play some deep, moody themes. But the endpoints of each night are announced by contrastingly comedic little jingles, with cheery elevator music at the beginning, and a theme at the end of the night that sounds straight out of an 80s VHS.
Oh my gosh, guys. Oh, I'm so sorry I kept y'all waiting. I ended up getting sidetracked with like other tasks I needed to take care of, so sorry about that. Also, you're not Remio, you're not banning people. You're not banning bots. Oh, not published to chat. That's probably why you didn't see them. Alright, guys. Yeah, I'm so sorry. We're getting back to it now.
With death, it's further exploiting how we perceive things when we're instructed to stay quiet. Every noise against that quiet state is intensified, especially when those noises are our fault, that we can trace to ourselves. So even a sound that might not usually be that intense, like appliances humming, starts to become a stressor in this context. That's the thing about sound intensity. It depends heavily on context, on how much our minds were previously attuned or instructed to perceive sounds, and how much we know about the source and the meaning of the sound. But these were some of the ways the FNAF series flavored its gameplay to make less complex scenarios still stressful, and perhaps to make jump scares feel like they top off a tense buildup rather than coming out of nowhere. And I have no doubt the FNAF devs and the growing community are not done with cooking up these intense experiences. But one last thing to note. There was a point, starting at FNAF 4, where the games approached relying on these quiet sound cues to progress. It's plausible to make it through the base games without listening to sound cues, but some of the late game challenges, especially the custom night in FNAF's sister location, become essentially impossible, or at least left very well up to luck, without attentive listening. And that's a problem if you don't have access to sound, such as people who are deaf or hard of hearing, or even just people without a speaker or headphones set up. It's just worth noting that when working on a horror game, with an achievable win condition, it behooves us to make sure it can be accomplished without the sound, just as FNAF 4 can be completed without the visuals. And I think that's everything. Yeah, that's it. That's all I have to say.
I mean,
Done. Closing time. I'm safe. Oh, I hope this video gave you some ideas about ways that sound intensity can work to your advantage if you make games, or to your horror if you're placed in the middle of them. I'd like to thank my friends Wolfgang and Rainer Schwarzerabe for helping out with this script. I'd also like to thank my patrons on Patreon, who help make my videos a more sustainable process. If you'd like to support my work directly and get perks like your credit here, seeing videos early, a vote on what music I arrange, and more behind-the-scenes content, you can visit my Patreon link in this video's description. And with that, I'm Scruffy, and thank you very much for watching.
The ultimate Five Nights at Freddy's iceberg. If you're like me and you want to know everything about the Five Nights at Freddy's franchise, then this iceberg is for you. If you're unfamiliar with the iceberg concept, basically you start at the tip and work your way downwards. As you continue to work your way downwards, there are things in here which will make your skin crawl and you won't believe the end of this video. So let's start at the beginning. Tier 1, common knowledge. The stay stage screen. The infamous unused stay screen image where all characters are looking towards the security camera. This was only ever seen in the game's trailer and never present in the game's full release, despite numerous people on very rare occasion having claimed to have seen it, even though there's no evidence for this. This is further cemented in the official book, claiming it was never implemented in the game. The reason so many people could have claimed to have seen this could be partially down to the Mandela effect. The Bite of 83 and of 87. The Bite of 83 was an important but terrifying event that took place within the year 1983 in Five Nights at Freddy's 4, making it one of the first ever events in the series' history. It shows a scene where the crying child gets laughed at by the older brother and youngsters, and Michael Afton wanting to scare him. Michael's gang make the crying child get close to Fredbear and gets his head into Fredbear's mouth. Fredbear's mouth eventually would shut on the crying child's head, killing him once and for all. Similar to this was the Bite of 87. The details of this attack and the identity of the animatronic responsible are currently unknown, but it allegedly caused the victim to lose the frontal lobe of their brain. The victim survived the attack. As a result of the incident, the animatronics were no longer allowed to wander around the building during the daytime. The management decided to limit their free roaming mode to nighttime. Scott Cawthon is the phone guy. Phone guy is the person who calls you during the beginning of each night in Five Nights at Freddy's. He's mainly there to establish the rules and provide tips to the player. Not many people realize that the voice actor of the phone guy is the game's creator, Scott Cawthon. Bonus information, the one who is implied to have killed the phone guy is actually Golden Freddy. The Five Nights at Freddy's book series. As well as being a popular video game franchise and now a movie, it also has its own string of books. The books focus on different events around different pizza plexes, starting with the first game all the way up to the latest Five Nights at Freddy's security breach. It is important to note, however, that although these books are very much similar to the games, the events in the books are not canon to the games. They're their own separate lore. Purple Guy is William Afton. William Afton, also known as the Purple Guy and Springtrap, was the main antagonist at Five Nights at Freddy's franchise prior to the Mimic. In the early days of Five Nights at Freddy's, he was very much a mysterious figure, but nowadays it is very much canon that William Afton is Purple Guy. Paper Pals. The Paper Pals are a decoration in Five Nights at Freddy's 2 in Party Room 4, in FNAF 3 in the office, and in Ultimate Custom Night as a playable character in FNAF World. They also make an appearance in Security Breach's DLC Ruin. They are 3 paper plate characters that are hung on the wall, and the one in the center appears to be a purple crying bunny. The one right of it, in the center, looks like Freddy Fazbear with a glued on brown circle appearing to be Freddy's upper jaw. And the one on the left is very mysterious. It is the only one that doesn't look like the animatronics, although it may be BB. FNAF original Springlock suits. Before Five Nights at Freddy's actually had animatronics, they had Springlock suits. These are suits that function as animatronics and costumes in a different mode, which can be switched back and forth by using a crank which winds up the suit. They are extremely dangerous. If the suit activates whilst the wearer is inside of it, their body will be bludgeoned severely and their eyes replaced with the electronic suit, causing them to be crushed and killed. These were obviously discontinued before the events of Five Nights at Freddy's 1. They were likely introduced to Fredbear's Family Diner at some point, likely before or during the events of 1983. The Shadow Animatronics. The Shadow Animatronics are ghost-like entities with an unknown place of origin, whereabouts, and history throughout the franchise. The Shadow Animatronics lack solid forms as they appear as shadowy supernatural spectres with forms based on the Fazbear Entertainment animatronics. Most of them have very dark colours while sporting glowing white eyes and teeth. FNAF 2 and 4 are prequels. Not everyone actually realizes that FNAF 2 and 4 was set before the events of the original Five Nights at Freddy's game. Five Nights at Freddy's 2 was set sometime after the events of 1983, although the animatronics seem more advanced than 1. The same thing goes for Five Nights at Freddy's 4, where you're meant to be playing as William Afton's child in his bedroom, scared of the animatronics. William Afton's child, also known as the Crying Child or Evan Afton, was killed, as we know, at the bite of 83. So the fact you're playing as him in FNAF 4 signifies it's way before the events of the first game. It's me text. It's Me is an Easter egg that appears in FNAF 1 and FNAF 2. An animatronic who shows that It's Me Easter egg before it appears is Golden Freddy. When Golden Freddy appears in FNAF 1 office for a short second, it flashes, "It's me." What that "It's me" text actually means is that Golden Freddy is supposedly controlled by the Afton family's little brother, aka the Crying Child, and he's trying to recognize the security guard, which is his brother, and tells his brother that it's him in the suit, hence why he says, "It's me" to his brother, the security guard. Breadbear. Breadbear is an unwithered version of Nightmare Fredbear. He's a bright yellow with a brown stomach, purple bow tie, and a purple hat with a black stripe around it. Breadbear is actually an unintentional moist meme. He is all-powerful being and was originally an attempt to make an unwithered and unnightmared Fredbear, but was laughed at for its shocked expression and poor editing. Tier 2, heading further down the iceberg. We're now leaving the office and heading into Pirate's Cove, so to speak. There's some really strange things in this iceberg, with Toy Chica's missing beak and the yellow bear, Sparky the dog. In the
Oh, Sparky the dog hoax. Yeah, hey Merc, hey sweetie. Oh, the ads got you. Oh no, are you free from the ads yet? Or did you just get into them? No scary games for tonight, just scary videos. I can barely run any games on this backup PC apparently on stream. Like I could play games, but they won't run on stream. So we're still having to just watch spooky videos.
Early days of the game's lifespan, someone began to spread rumours about a hidden 6 animatronic named Sparky the dog. Sure enough, screenshots began to crop up on Tumblr. Reportedly, Sparky the one-armed dog was a non-violent and would never attack the player, only appearing occasionally in the backstage doorway. However, it was eventually revealed as a hoax by its creators, with all the screenshots being photoshopped. Basically, the dog animatronic does not exist. However, that was until Five Nights at Freddy's the movie released, as he made a surprise appearance in the movie. Ironically enough, the appearance took place backstage, where the hoax originally began.
I must have missed
thus,
that.
Sparky the dog is now canon in the FNAF universe. Sugar the cat. Sugar the cat was an animatronic entertainer at Freddy Fazbear's Pizza and a minor antagonist in the Return to Freddy's classic. The concept of Sugar the cat was stolen from Emil Mako's fan-made animatronic, Candy the cat.
Yeah,
It is a blue cat and has a red tie, which can easily be seen when it's hiding behind the poster in the dining area. It is a toy animatronic and the only toy animatronic produced after the others were scrapped. Due to it obviously being stolen from Emil Mako, a copyright issue followed and was never actually put into the game. Mangle's gender. There's been a huge debate in the fandom whether Mangle is female or male. Mangle is featured in custom night mode called Ladies Night, but is also referred to with he, him pronouns by the phone guy. They have been referred to with he, him, her, and they and them pronouns. Scott Cawthon eventually answers Mangle's gender with yes, leaving fans to still speculate to this day. Toy Chica's missing beak. When you see Toy Chica on the stage, she has her beak, but when she leaves, Toy Chica actually takes off her beak for some reason. Many people have speculated that the reason she takes off her beak is when she leaves the stage, she can bite you. From what we know, her beak is really small and she can't open her mouth wide, so she takes off her beak. It is unknown where she places her beak though. It was however confirmed in a late interview with Scott Cawthon with Dorko that she was not scary enough, so he gave her that secondary design for when she leaves the stage, so that she would be more scary, thus solving the missing beak issue. Chipper and Sons Lumber Co. Before Scott Cawthon had made Five Nights at Freddy's, he made a game called Chipper and Sons Lumber Co.
Shit, hold on, I'll be right back. I promise I'll be right back. Why are your shoes up here?
I don't know.
You should have put them back in the closet.
We forget.
It follows a story of a lumber company run by a chipper and a humanoid
be back.
beaver whose son Tyke was a playable character. The characters from this game were eventually featured in the
Non-binary.
Five
Yeah.
Nights at Freddy's franchise, making several appearances
That's
throughout
also a
its history.
possibility.
He also
Like
becomes the
moi.
mascot for L-Chips, which we see in Five Nights at Freddy's Security Breach.
Yeah.
Marionette versus
Like I said, unfortunately, no scary games this Sunday, because I still don't have my main PC back. So yeah, I promise though, when I get it back, we will do the next Spooky Sunday. When I get the main PC back, oh, sorry, I lost my train of thought. When I get the main PC back, then the Spooky Sunday after that, I promise I'll play something spooky.
puppet. The puppet in the Five Nights at Freddy's franchise is also called the marionette in other versions of the game. This confused many fans into believing the puppet and the marionette were completely separate and their own entities, which is not true. The entity was originally called the marionette, but then Scott Cawthon decided to change it to the name the puppet. So why was the marionette's name changed to the puppet? Well, in French, marionnette means Little Mary. During the Middle Ages, string puppets were often used in France to depict Bible events, with the Virgin Mary being a popular character, hence the name. So puppet seemed much more fitting as opposed to marionette. The Fazbear Fan Initiative. The Fazbear Fanverse Initiative, also simply known as the Fazbear Fanverse, is a collaboration by Scott Cawthon and creators of popular Five Nights at Freddy's fan games. This project is, in Scott's own words, a giant collaboration involving several fan game creators, and the goal of the project is actually to support creators of some of the most popular fan Freddy games, meaning he would essentially help fund the development of new games for the series, and essentially the games they make would then be considered canon to the FNAF universe. However, it's important to note that not all fan games will get officially endorsed or licensed for the initiative due to copyrights, vulgar content, etc. Some examples are Five Nights at Freddy's Treasure Island, Five Nights at Wario's, Day Shift at Freddy's, and Five Nights at Freddy's Fuckboys. The Yellow Bear. The Yellow Bear, or Golden Freddy as it's known to by fans, is a mysterious ghost-like entity who takes on the form of a yellow animatronic bear. He plays a prominent role in the Five Nights at Freddy's series, although his origins are cryptic and unknown. Despite the good ending of the game presumably showing his soul to be set free, it is speculated that the spirit refuses. Foxy is actually a good guy. Many people believe that Foxy the animatronic in the first game is actually a good guy, because Foxy's purpose in the game is to make sure the player frequently checks the video feed. This is meant to keep the player immersed in the horror of the game instead of exploiting the game's mechanic and simply camping out the office. So this led many fans to believe that Foxy is actually trying to help the player by telling them to keep their eyes on the camera for the real nasty animatronics. Tier 3, heading further below the iceberg, leaving Pirates Cove and going into the main hall. There's some great things in this, such as Springtrap in the newspaper, Funtime Bonnie, Candy Cadet stories. Things start to take a dark turn at this point. Handprint on Freddy's face. In a render from one of the games, you can clearly see what looks like a handprint on Freddy Fazbear's face. No one actually knows what the handprints mean, but a popular theory is that Freddy caused the bite of 87. It is believed that right before the bite, someone tried to push him back, which obviously failed. There's also another theory that the handprint is actually Freddy's himself, where he's tried to rip himself apart. Further to this, there's also handprints on Golden Freddy's face. Springtrap in the newspaper. At the ending of FNAF 3, you can clearly see a newspaper, but if you brighten this newspaper up, you actually see an image of Springtrap in the top right corner, showing in fact that he is alive after the events of Five Nights at Freddy's 3. Funtime Bonnie. In Five Nights at Freddy's sister location, we see many Funtime variants of the animatronics, such as Funtime Freddy, Funtime Foxy, but we never actually see a Funtime Bonnie. We do see a true iteration of Bonnie in Cam 02. His torso and head are at the end of the short hallway, but Scott Cawthon himself confirmed that Funtime Bonnie was never a thing and was never intended to be in sister location. Funtime Puppet in sister location trailer. During the initial trailer for Five Nights at Freddy's sister location, we see Foxy, and Foxy is obviously very metallic. In Foxy's metallic reflection, we can see what only looked like the puppet. Many people theorized for years on who this was, what it could actually be, whether it was the puppet from the original Five Nights at Freddy's 2, but what it turned out to be was Scott put the models close to each other when he was conducting the trailer, and it just turns out to be Baby shown in Funtime Foxy's reflection. Bonnie running down hallway. In the original Five Nights at Freddy's trailer, we see Bonnie running down the hallway. Obviously in the game this never happens, we never see Bonnie run down the hallway, it's always Foxy. The reason we see Bonnie running down the hallway, not Foxy, is they were planning to keep Foxy a reveal / a secret for the final release of the game. Five Nights at Freddy's Kickstarter. Before Five Nights at Freddy's was released on Steam for purchase, Scott Cawthon actually decided to go through the Kickstarter program in June. This was taken down for some unknown reason and then was later published in August on Steam. My only guess is that Scott actually found a publisher before he decided to click that button on Kickstarter. The original Kickstarter page is still up there for people to view though. Candy Cadet Stories. Candy Cadet, or Cadet Ghost in Ultimate Custom Night Game Files, is a buyable robot which tells the player stories and gives out candy. There are 3 known stories that Candy Cadet will tell you after he gives you candy. The possibility of hearing a story is very difficult and takes a fond memory of the color schemes that quickly flash on him. All of his stories have a similar theme of destruction of 5 things or 5 things being melted into one. This could possibly be related to the murder of the 5 children, the 5 members of the Afton family, the 5 animatronics forming Ennard, the destruction of 5 animatronics roaming the underground of the FFPS pizzeria, or something else that hasn't yet been discovered. Funtime Freddy is German. During the original voice recordings for Funtime Freddy, it was intended for him to actually be German. This was eventually cut and they decided to keep the normal voice lines. However, there are some clips of him with a German accent. Have a listen.
Hello, little children. Glad to see you back again. Come closer. I'll sing a song for you.
Funtime Freddy's unused voice lines. Now this one's extremely interesting. Funtime Freddy has a load of voice lines that were unused for the game
And of
as
course,
revealed
Beavis would
from
be like,
Matt Pat's
"Oh,
livestream video
that's
with
a really
Kellen
good
Goff.
idea,
Before
bud."
the livestream, however, Kellen Goff refused to show Funtime Freddy's unused dialogue lines without Scott Cawthon's permission. He also revealed in that livestream that Funtime Freddy was once intended to have a German accent. There are so many voice lines, but I'll pick out a standout few.
Come closer, sir. I'll sing a song for you. This is my friend Bon Bon. Say hi, Bon Bon. Oh, birthday.
Say hi, Bon Bon.
Come out wherever you are. You sure? Okay. Let's go get him in 3, 2, 1.
What?
Ballora is Afton's wife. Ballora is a major antagonist and ballerina dancer and a GIF. If you've been around a while, you will know about the Charlie GIF. It's said that if you looked at it for more than 40 seconds, you would go insane. But obviously, if you know anything about this GIF, it's totally untrue, as the Charlie GIF never actually existed.
Oh my god, could you not?
What's the matter?
Wait, what the fuck?
Are you feeling alright?
Did it just skip?
Let's go get him in 3, 2, 1.
Ballora is Afton's wife. Ballora is a major antagonist and ballerina dancer and a GIF. If you've been around...
Oh, he might have had to make an edit there. Okay. Let's see if anybody mentioned it. Does he mention anything about it? See if there's like Funtime Bonnie technically does exist, he's just Bon Bon here. Yeah. Oh, he doesn't mention the dream theory? Huh. Oh, excuse me. Goodness, it worked. Okay, well.
While you will know about the Charlie GIF. It's said that if you looked at it for more than 40 seconds, you would go insane. But obviously, if you know anything about this GIF, it's totally untrue, as the Charlie GIF never actually existed. It was a joke. Like the WDW simulation of the human brain or the Wario apparition, Charlie GIF doesn't exist. Though if it did, it probably was just heard jumping through a window or fading away or something. Or am I just having you on? Was it real? Is there a creepypasta ever out there?
I have
Who
no idea what
knows?
you're talking
The
about. I've
cut
never heard of
content
that.
lives mechanic. In FNAF 1, 2, and 3, if you dig into the game's files, you can find a deleted mechanic for lives. Assumingly this would be if you get jump scared, you'd lose a life rather than completely dying in itself. For whatever reason, this was cut from the game, and I think it was a good choice. Tier 4. Heading below the iceberg, we're now entering parts and service where no one really goes, and we find all the dark and mysterious things. There's some really great things in this tier, such as Vanny's Mask and Dark Springtrap. Scott's Nightmare with Bonnie. According to a Five Nights at Freddy's wiki post, which cites a comment of Corfin's in a now-deleted forum thread, the FNAF creator once had a chilling nightmare about Bonnie, the blue animatronic rabbit. In the dream, Corfin is reported to have spotted Bonnie standing in the hall outside his bedroom, having to hold the door shut to stop them from entering. Interestingly enough, Corfin's nightmare was elaborate enough to include in the game mechanics. Puppet in FNAF 1 location. The Give Gifts, Give Life minigame depicts the marionette giving the MCI victims gifts and new life through the animatronics' heads. As well as this, the FNAF 2 cutscene reveals the marionette still had a presence even in the original restaurant that was first shown in FNAF 1. So in a nutshell, confirming the puppet was indeed in FNAF 1. Yendo. Yendo is a fun-time endoskeleton and a minor antagonist from the Five Nights at Freddy's sister location. Despite his small role in the main game, he also appears in Custom Night. Yendo is an endoskeleton strongly similar to Funtime Freddy's. He has a complete lack of suit shell, which completely reveal all the endoskeleton and the wirings, somewhat resembling human muscle layers. Although it has three main differences: a lack of inner faceplates, both hands while lacking a hand puppet, the yellow irises rather than Funtime Freddy's hazel blue, and if observed closely, his nose looks different compared to Funtime Freddy's, being slightly flatter. Drowning in the Lake. The Drowning in the Lake ending is an ending which we find in FNAF World and is an extremely strange one at that. This ending is found in a similar fashion as the fourth glitch ending with some minor changes at the end. If you pace back and forth above the lake with the Freddy sprite, it should begin to shift closer and closer to the lake before eventually falling in. Hitting the arrow keys back and forth will cause Freddy to struggle until he goes completely under the water. He will then be shown falling in the middle of a black screen, and after about 2 minutes the screen will cut to a figure who seems to have their back to the player and arms around two others. The background will flash many colours and stay like this until the player closes the game via the task menu or presses F2 to restart the game. This ending still hasn't been solved to this day, but many people believe that the actual shadows may be Scott with his two sons looking into the computer screen, as he wanted FNAF World to be his last FNAF game. Dark Springtrap. Dark Springtrap is Springtrap as he appears in the cutscene after beating Golden Freddy mode on very hard in the Five Nights at Freddy's sister location, Custom Night. The difference he has from Springtrap is that he is missing an eye wire and pelvis. He has a shadowy, possibly fire-damaged look, seemingly just to confirm he's still around. Mini-Rena in Popcorn. There is an extremely rare Easter egg in sister location during the end of night sequences, where a Mini-Rena can pop out of your popcorn bucket. Get Princess Quest. Princess Quest is an in-universe video game franchise that appears in both the mobile port of Five Nights at Freddy's Help Wanted and Five Nights at Freddy's Security Breach. In the Help Wanted mobile port, the minigame can be accessed from the Freddy Fazbear Virtual Experience hub room. In Five Nights at Freddy's Security Breach, though, it can be accessed through the arcade cabinets. Beating all three Princess Quests will grant the player a secret ending in which Gregory frees Vanessa of Glitch Trap's control. The princess in Princess Quest may be a manifestation of Golden Freddy trying to defeat William and bring him down to make up for the mistake of accidentally allowing William to return to begin with, as in the files, the princess is named Cassidy. Further to this, in the walkway section of Princess Quest 3, Chica can be seen watching the princess. This may be a reference to how Susie, the girl who possesses Chica, was William Afton's first victim. FNAF 1 was planned to be the last game. Before Scott Corfin had made Five Nights at Freddy's, he made other various games with little to no success. He decided that FNAF 1 would be his last game if it was not successful. Lucky for him, it was a success and he continued. Otherwise, if it had flopped, he would not be making games today. Golden Freddy in Five Nights at Freddy's 3. Believe it or not, Golden Freddy actually makes a minor appearance in Five Nights at Freddy's 3 in the minigame Stage 01 and a brief appearance in the Glitch minigame. Golden Freddy's mask is also worn by the child at the end of the Happiest Day minigame. In the Stage 01 minigame, Golden Freddy looks exceedingly different from how he did in the original games. And the Stage 01 Golden Freddy is the only Freddy counterpart whose hat colour is different than the rest, being brown.
Wouldn't FNAF
Vanny's
one be
mask.
started with
Vanny's
a-
mask, or the security
Not,
mask, is an advanced headset that allows the wearer to
lore-wise.
interface with a virtual
Chronologically,
augmented neural
game
network
release,
integration
yeah,
unit,
but
or
lore-wise,
Vanny for short. Vanny
no.
integrated this mask into her costume, but what is extremely interesting is the fact that she has 2 handprints on the back of her mask and 1 on the back of her torso. Why these handprints are on there, no one really knows. But fans have speculated it could be where she was taking on and off the suit. Tier 5, heading into the abyss. We're now heading
yeah,
into the
probably.
back rooms from parts and service. All the discarded, dark, forgotten things live here. FNAF was based on real Chuck E. Cheese murders. Back when the games
Nope.
were still relatively new, people speculated that they were based off a real murder in Chuck E. Cheese restaurant in the year 1993, especially as the first FNAF game was based in the 1990s. It is true that Five Nights at Freddy's was based on Chuck E. Cheese, or formerly Showbiz Pizza, or at least took some inspiration, but the main inspiration came from his older games, Chipper Sons and Lumberco.
Yeah.
The game's visuals were criticized for the characters looking like scary animatronic animals. Scott was heartbroken by the criticism and almost gave up making the game entirely. But no, the game was not based on the murders in the Chuck E. Cheese. Five Nights at Freddy's 1 Scream origin. Not many people actually realize where the original Scream origin came from. It's from
play
a
it.
scene from the 1981 British science fiction horror film Insomnoid, where a woman named Sandy, played by an English film stage and television actress Judy Geeson, gives birth to a baby alien, and her scream is actually taken from that. Mike Kill All. Back when the original FNAF 2 trailer released, it featured a segment where there was kids singing London Bridge is Falling Down. But if you actually play this bit backwards, it actually says Mike Kill All. Many fans had believed
don't
that this
hear
was a
any of
secret
that.
message in the FNAF 2 trailer, but it just turns out it's a coincidence. The
Yeah.
Crying Cupcake. In the Chica's Party
It's
mini-game
that
in the
pareidolia,
FNAF
but
3,
for
you can
audio.
access an area with what appears to
forget what
be
it's called.
crying cupcakes, and one of them even chases you but can't kill you. They say they represent the 5 MCI, and the one following you actually represents Golden Freddy. FNAF in Gravity Falls. There's an episode in Gravity Falls where it features animatronics very much like the FNAF characters, which come alive and try and hunt the guests. Many people had believed that this was a FNAF reference in Gravity Falls, but it's actually a pure coincidence, as the script was written and the episode was almost done with animating before FNAF was even released. So although it seems like a reference, it's more to the fact that Gravity Falls was actually predicting FNAF, but the reality is it was just a pure coincidence. Swearing in FNAF World. In the Foxy Fighters minigame of Update
Oh, yeah.
1.20, JJ has an unused voice clip
Oh,
including a swear that would probably play after the nighttime Chica's plane is shut down. It features her saying,
Now I'm going to kick your ass!
Wait, what? I can't see that name.
This voice line was likely unused due to it being inappropriate and containing profanity, unsuited for players, but I find that extremely insane because the entire game is focused on killing and little kids being stuffed in animatronic objects.
Yeah, but
Vanny's
FNAF
knife.
World.
In the original Five Nights at Freddy's trailer and some stills, Vanny is appeared to be holding a
I like
knife.
how it's
Many people
like,
had
oh,
speculated
wait,
that there was
I
some
can't say
secret
that.
meaning for this, but it was actually a possible decision by Scott, as most merch now features Vanny or William Spring Bonnie using a pizza cutter instead of a knife. It was actually done because of censorship. They did the same thing with Gregory saying he was broken rather than bleeding. Scott has mentioned also previous that he prefers to avoid real-life violence, so example, no explicit weapons such as knives and guns. So unfortunately, we're unlikely to see Freddy holding a Glock anytime soon. Lolbit mask. Lolbit is an animatronic in Five Nights at Freddy's sister
but a
location.
pizza
Lolbit
cutter is
appears as
still
an
a blade.
Easter egg in the main game
Like, that makes
as an
no sense.
antagonist in Custom Night. The
Censorship
animatronic
is
greatly
weird,
resembles
man.
Funtime Foxy with a few recolors. And very rarely, when entering the primary control module, Enid's mask will be replaced with Lolbit's mask. And although Lolbit is shown to have a body in FNAF World, neither Lolbit's endoskeleton nor their lower body have been shown in sister location. And it is unknown if Lolbit can even
trying
open
to
its
push it back on your
faceplate.
bed.
Scott listens to Mark. Markiplier and the FNAF franchise have a long history. He is, of course, the king of Five Nights at Freddy's, and he popularized it and is the reason it got so famous. So it seems only natural that its creator, Scott Cawthon, listens to Markiplier in his put into the franchise. There's been several iterations where Mark has seemingly predicted the outcome of FNAF lore or game mechanics. For example, where he says Foxy should be replaced by a character called Roxy. Lo and behold, that happens in Five Nights at Freddy's Security Breach. Obviously, this has not been outright confirmed by either party, but it is a huge speculation within the community.
For some reason. What the hell?
What's that?
How many wings does a bees have?
Bees?
Yeah.
They're
how many wings?
They're insects, so they have 6 legs.
I said wings.
Oh, wings? I thought you said legs.
No, I said wings.
Oh my goodness! I think they have a set of like the single wings, so 2 wings.
Incorrect. Answer is 4.
They don't have 4 wings.
But in this game, they have.
I'm pretty sure bees have
Well, I answered it.
2 wings.
Well, I answered it, but it says wrong answer.
Wait a minute. Shit, man, I'm gonna have to look that up. I'm pretty sure they had a set of single wings.
Yeah, I got the wrong answers. I'm sure the beast has 4 wings. I'll read from the book.
Oh my god, you're right. I forgot they have like 2 long wings and then like 2 little tiny wings under that. You're absolutely right, it is 4 wings. Oh my god, I can't believe I got that wrong.
Purple guy! Oh, good. Second night, great.
The Hanging Mangle. Back when Five Nights at Freddy's sister location was due for release, Scott Corvin added a black and white teaser with a hanging mangle. This hanging mangle basically foreshadowed events on Night 5 of the sister location, where you see a hanging technician. But in actual fact, this has been debunked. It's not Mangle who's hanging, it's actually withered toy Foxy. Mangle doesn't have the faceplates or the structure of Funtime Foxy. This is it, the abyss, the darkness of the iceberg, and we've moved on to what we would call the bad ending. This is all the darkest stuff you can find on FNAF and things you wouldn't really hear of at all unless you're a true super hardened fan. And even then, I'll be surprised if you've heard of some of this. AftonRobotics.com. Everyone knows that William Afton had his own robotics company which made the animatronics. And believe it or not, there is actually an Afton Robotics website, although there is no information to show whatsoever. The site is still accessible, however, but nothing is displayed whatsoever. If anyone has any information on this, please let me know in the comments below. The banned Five Nights at Freddy games. Five Nights at Freddy's 3 was actually a game before Five Nights at Freddy's 3, the official version, came out. There was a fan version called Five Nights at Freddy's 3, which Scott Corvin told them to take down. Obviously, there was various reasons. One, because it wasn't official, but this Five Nights at Freddy's 3 unofficial game used copyrighted content in its release. And if you remember from earlier, I talked about Sugar the Cat. The Sugar the Cat was used in this game, where it was stolen from its respectful owners. Needless to say, Scott Corvin asked this to be taken down immediately, or further action would have been taken against its creator. Some examples are Five Nights at Freddy's Treasure Island, Five Nights at Wario's, Day Shift at Freddy's, and Five Nights at Freddy's Fuckboys. MikeBot.
No,
MikeBot is the
Nights
theory
at
that Michael Afton is an android with a synthetic human flesh-like Terminator instead of a normal biological human. It was created by Blackfoot Ferret and popularized by MatPat. What makes this even more interesting is the fact that Scott was asked about it and he never debunked it at all. One piece of evidence for it is that something similar happened in one of the novels, with the logic being Scott says that this is something that can happen in the FNAF universe, so it could happen here too. Chica's missing eyes. Similar to where Toy Chica removes her beak, we also see Toy Chica remove her eyes before she leaves the stage. But the reason is, she doesn't actually remove her eyes. A lot of animatronics know the technique officially called silver eyes. If the novels are anything to go by, and they're in place of the FNAF media that drives into it, these are the result of haunted objects being photographed or filmed. She doesn't remove her eyes, it's ghost magic that produces a light in them, and she just turns the light off. And in any case, all the animatronics can actually do the eye thing. Chica is just the only one who seems to do it on camera. the Enid virus. Enid is an amalgamation of all the Circus Baby's Pizza World's animatronics, who's controlled mainly by Circus Baby. It appeared in the Five Nights at Freddy's sister location as the final antagonist. Enid was formed by combining the Funtime animatronics, Circus Baby, Funtime Freddy, Bon Bon, Funtime Foxy, and Ballora, all of them fused together. But many people believe that Enid is actually a virus, because where did Enid actually come from? Where was the driving force? What was it before it was actually any animatronic? And in the Enid teaser is written, "There's a little of me in everybody," which doesn't make sense because they're supposed to be an amalgamation of things together. So it's implying that this thing, Enid, is invading or going into the bodies of other animatronics and then melding them together, taking control of their consciousness. Hence, the Enid virus. Beta Endo 01. In the game's Steam Greenlight and trailer, Freddy Fazbear and Bonnie's exoskeleton look very different to the final build. The endoskeleton also included rectangular nostrils, but these were entirely absent in the game's final cut. Not to mention, during production, when brainstorming for the fourth character, Scott first came up with the wolf animatronic. After rejecting this idea, he thought up about having a beaver animatronic, but due to bearing too much reminiscence to Mr. Chipper from Chipper and Sons Lumber Co., the beaver animatronic ended up being replaced by Foxy. Scott did eventually have his wolf animatronic though in Security Breach. So one could indeed argue that Roxy was first thought up during the original Five Nights at Freddy's. Five Nights at Freddy's Zero. Five Nights at Freddy's Zero is actually a creepypasta, believe it or not. There was rumored to be an unreleased game which was claimed to be the first Five Nights at Freddy's game in the franchise back in 2013, Five Nights at Freddy's Zero. It was claimed that you could download this from Scott's website, although I'm not going to go into all the details on this creepypasta. It does get quite gruesome and quite scary. I would highly recommend checking it out if you're interested. The Hidden Sister Location Room. In Five Nights at Freddy's sister location, Michael Afton returns to his home after almost every night in order to watch an episode of The Immortal and the Restless on TV. In FNAF Security Breach, however, his entire living room has been mysteriously recreated inside the Mega Pizzaplex, right down to the popcorn and exotic butters that players could find in FNAF's sister location. Now, why would they go through the hassle of creating an exact replica? Well, they wouldn't. It is actually the room you play and see in FNAF's sister location. This has never actually been officially confirmed, but why would they make an exact replica in the Pizzaplex? This has led many theories to speculate on what the actual purpose of this was. It's almost exactly the same, except for a few notable changes. In addition to a cryptic cipher that can be found on the wall, there's a CD player that players can use to listen to all 16 collectible retro CDs that are hidden throughout the Mega Pizzaplex. These CDs contain recordings of Vanessa's therapy sessions that reveal more of her backstory, as well as some of the secrets about what's been going on in the mall, but they can only be found using Roxy's eyes. Missing kids in Stage 01 screen. In the Stage 01 minigame, there appears to be an actual missing child, which is extremely confusing because this is meant to be Fredbear's, not Freddy Fazbear's. This entire sequence and frame has led to a whole host of theories on what it could mean. Many people believe that it's a 6th victim in the MCI. Despite the fact that there were only ever 5 victims from what we can tell, this seems to be a 6th victim entirely separate from the MCI that was killed before the events at the Fredbear family diner. This mystery is still left unsolved until this day. Have any of these in the tiers shocked you? Did you know of some of these? Please let me know in the comments below, because I read every single comment. And if you did enjoy this video, please hit that like button. It took me absolutely ages to make. And subscribe, because there's plenty more FNAF content coming up, and there's even more on the channel. And if you enjoyed this, I highly recommend checking out my cut content video. It's exactly like this with all the cut content from all the Five Nights at Freddy games. I'm Twisty the Twisted Animatronic, and stay safe out there, superstar.
Terrible job, super shit. No, I'm kidding. Somebody took that. Excellent work, or excellent job, superstar.
Welcome back to the channel, everyone. I am pngtuber Gaming. I like to chew ass and talk about scary shit in video games, and I'm all out of ass to chew right now. So I guess all we have left to do is talk about scary shit in video games. I've talked a lot on the channel about creepy content in games, specifically kid-friendly games more recently, but today I wanted to take a look at creepier things that were removed from games, whether it was from them being too creepy for the games they were going to be in, or for other reasons entirely. Cut content from video games, especially your favorite video games, is like playing a fun game of what if, where the game you know so well had a chance of being very different from what you remember. It's almost like taking a look into an alternate timeline where you see Luigi actually did hang himself in the mansion. So today I want to focus on that and take a look through a few games backends and really dig out some creepy stuff that developers thought no one would ever find.
yeah,
Luigi's Mansion is filled with unused content, mainly being cut changes to the main gameplay, like the fact your Poltergust could overheat in the original version of the game, or changes like cutting enemies like the chef portrait ghost that might have appeared in the kitchen area. These changes were probably better for the game in the end, but when it comes to what we're talking about today, I don't know if that's really the case. In the files for the game, there is a file named elh.szp, and it appears to be a cut enemy or boss character from the final Luigi's Mansion game. The file represents a character who is a giant textureless blob that takes the form of a sludge-like creature. It clearly never made it super far in development, as it's a bright grayish color, missing any textures to make it stand out really. Hackers have actually been able to bring this model into the game by replacing the first toad you talk to in the game present in the foyer. ELH has 6 distinct animations, of which all can be seen when he is brought into the game. Most of these movements are attacks and idle animations, but some seem to suggest the boss was meant to focus on the elemental attacks Luigi has and that he gains throughout the game, like the fire, ice, and water. This is because certain animations show this ghost spawning pillars of fire along with some sort of ember sparks or some sort of elemental dust in the air. To many, the creature resembles what might be an early version of the boss Bogmire in the final game that ended up being cut after the final model was created. I could actually see this as they share pretty similar characteristics, as both are gooey sludge-like monsters. When we look at the entity in this video where the player clearly hacked the ELH monster in, it appears very creepy and disturbing, as it's not only huge and intimidating, but appropriately feels pretty out of place here. Maybe it's just because there's a direct threat in the foyer, a room before that didn't feature any enemies, besides that dastardly chandelier that is. ELH isn't even this creature's actual name, as this was what was given to it by the people who found it based on the file name elh.szp. Whatever this thing is, it proves that the first Luigi's Mansion could have looked a lot different than how we know it today, and that's pretty exciting to me because I love this fucking game. ELH is also commonly thought to be not a boss at all, but a souped up enemy who might have combined all the abilities, as mentioned before, of the common elemental ghost into one roided out hulk of a ghost. There's even more theories as to what he might have actually done as an enemy. Some people say he was meant to act as maybe a Mr. X type of character, or an SAX for Metroid or something, where it would slowly stalk Luigi throughout the mansion, and that's gotta be the most terrifying theory I've heard for this thing so far. To me, the mere presence of this creature in this video is enough to put me a little bit on edge, so I can't imagine if this thing had an actual boss fight and appearance in the final game. Like, what would that thing look like? Some people also say they prefer this version if it was an earlier version of Bogmire, as opposed to the final version of Bogmire we got, and I'm not too sure. I've grown to like the Bogmire we have now, but looking back at ELH, he does seem a little bit more intimidating, so I don't know. What do you guys think? I've talked about Bully one other time on the channel before, and it was covering a pretty disturbing soundbite you can hear in what seems to be a domestic violence incident happening in the nearby town that Bully takes place in. I thought for sure, right, nothing could get as disturbing as domestic violence from the game, but if we take a look at the cut content that was left in the game's back end, we can find a fate for the main character, Jimmy, that is pretty fucking grim. In a later boss fight in the game, Jimmy fights another student named Edgar, and the boss fight takes place in a factory above a large vat of acid, pretty much akin to that one scene in Tim Burton's Batman where Joker takes a little tumble. Oops. Initially, the battle seems like any other standard boss battle in the game with some gimmicks here and there, but after some people started to dig into the back end of the game, they found that a large part of the boss battle was seemingly missing. This was due to things like Edgar's audio clips that were cut out, suggesting that Jimmy was meant to die by falling into the acid.
Poor little Jimmy taking an acid bath.
Edgar even teases him a little bit in these sound bites, and this all but confirms that this was once meant to be one of Jimmy's fates in the game. Not only this, but there is code, and if you hack the game, you can actually take Jimmy into the, dip him into the acid, wherein he would actually die. There wouldn't be any reason for this trigger to happen if they hadn't planned on using it before it was cut out of the game as a way to kill off Jimmy. Many believe this just to be a gruesome, disturbing way to get a game over, similar to how Michael in GTA 5 had that meat grinder game over, but some players believe this was actually a cut alternate ending for the game entirely, in which canonically Jimmy ultimately meets his fate by being thrown into the acid and slowly dissolving away, all while Edgar mocks him. Jesus Christ. Right? Here is a recreation of what this scene might have looked like by the YouTuber Deadpool XYZ, and it's a pretty faithful one if I must say.
That burns, doesn't it? Bitch, bitch, bitch.
Yeah, that's some pretty heavy shit right there. And like this comment said, at least Jimmy is toughing it out and not screaming in pain, because that would have really made it really hard to watch. Not to say watching Edgar mock a dissolving Jimmy isn't dark enough, but it could have been a lot worse here. And since this is just a mock-up, who knows how dark this scene really would have played out had it been kept in the final game. Rockstar Games clearly aren't scared of putting more dark and real things into their games, but if this had made it into Bully and was fully featured as an alternate ending for Jimmy, where he fucking dies in acid, I think it would have definitely earned a mature rating without a doubt, and maybe they wanted to avoid that. I mean, don't get me wrong, things like domestic violence is definitely dark enough in the game, but adding in the fact that one of the main characters could have met his fate like this really makes you wonder just how dark the world of Bully would be if Rockstar put everything they wanted into it. The first Half-Life saw a decent bit of cut content, whether it was enemies and characters or whole gameplay designs being omitted. One of the enemies that was cut from the game was known as Mr. Friendly, and despite his name, he is truly one of the creepiest cut characters from a game in my opinion. This thing is a large skin-first type creature that is in the shape of a pseudo-horse thing with long, dangly tentacles in its front. This thing was pretty packed with moves like a vomiting attack, most similar to the Boomer from Left 4 Dead. Interestingly, the slam attack Friendly does would have knocked the glasses off the main character Gordon, and thus you'd have to attack this thing with blurred vision. That's crazy. A really cool concept, but alas, they weren't able to implement it due to the limitations at the time. And I gotta say, that's a fat rip. That sounds like such a cool aspect and would have made this guy even more creepy than he already is, because you wouldn't be able to see him. The creature itself in design is pretty creepy, up there with the other iconic designs of the Half-Life series, but there's actually an interesting backstory of how this creature came to be. Ken Birdwell, a Valve software engineer, was looking for new designs for certain enemies and decided to ask his 12-year-old brother Ted to mock up some designs of the creatures after he had witnessed some drawings of his and was honestly pretty impressed. When Ted brought the drawings in, Ken noticed that a lot of them were sexual in nature, and he was flabbergasted that Ted brought in such grotesque drawings to his place of work and in front of his boss, Gabe Newell. Turns out this type of design is exactly what Gabe was looking for. Let's go, Ted. As was stated on the Half-Life wiki, Newell and Backman then began a discussion about possible psychosexual alien behaviors and clinical descriptions of disturbed adolescent sexual fantasies. The sexual themes of some of these enemies were intended to elicit a response from the innate homophobia of 14-year-old boys, a significant portion of the targeted audience for the game. So yeah, if you're a 14-year-old boy who's always in my comments talking about how lazy and how shit my videos are, well, guess what? Penis jump scare idiots. I do think this is pretty funny, as even back then, Gabe was aware of his audience and was trying to scare them to the point he'd add in phallic-like enemies like Mr. Friendly here in an attempt to scare off the ignorant players of the time. Although Mr. Friendly never made it into Half-Life, I think he's still a super creepy enemy in design. And no, it's not just because he's dong-shaped, okay? I got no problem with that. It's more like his mole-like qualities, such as missing eyes and a giant mouth with large teeth protruding out of it. Overall, I think they were maybe a little too ambitious with Mr. Friendly, and if they had toned down some of the effects he had on the player, then maybe he would have ended up in the game. Regardless, though, there are still a bunch of creepy shit to find in the Half-Life universe, schlong-shaped or not. The first Silent Hill, while not as popular as the second Silent Hill, is still an amazing horror experience that introduced the world to some of the creepiest creature designs in a horror game. The game is chock full of these disfigured creatures, but there is actually a lot of cut content from the Silent Hill series over the years, specifically when it comes to the game's monsters and enemies. Today I want to focus solely on the first game's cut content, but if I ever do a follow-up video, there is some more creepy shit from later games like Homecoming that was cut, so maybe I'll do a follow-up for them because there's some pretty wacky shit in here. For now though, I want to run through some of the creepier cut monsters from the first Silent Hill all the way back in 1999. Most of the cut monsters for this game were oddly enough designed around real-life animals, but throwing them through a Silent Hill filter, if you will. All of the footage I'm going to use in this segment are from animation tests of the cut monsters from the channel Gyromancy, and these were based off the leak of Silent Hill's back end by the person who found those monsters, Rocker666. The butterfly is a large cut monster enemy that resembles more of a moth to me, but it was deemed a butterfly in the game's back end. It is a large brown winged bug that appears to have both attack and death animations, confirming this would have been an enemy player's fight in the game. This one in particular kind of sends a chill down my spine, as I remember one night I was taking out the garbage when I was living at my parents', and it was pretty dark out, like dusk, and I was walking towards the garbage can when I just hear this large flapping like huge wings right above me. I never actually got visual confirmation of what it was, but I had been playing a lot of Animal Crossing at the time, and I was catching a lot of the big moths you find during the summer months in that game. So I was fully convinced I almost got murked by the world's largest moth in my backyard. Ever since then, I've been a little bit skeeved out by oversized moths and butterflies of the sort, so even seeing this low poly model squirming around makes me a little bit uneasy, to be honest. Unfortunate we didn't get the enemy in the final game, as it would have been pretty impactful for anyone with fears of bugs, especially oversized ones that can fly, like this guy.
That's really, he looks like he was just
this chicken enemy right here is either really funny or really disturbing to you, and I can't figure out which side I stand on here. It's assumed that this enemy would have actually been a boss in the game, as it's much larger than any of the other cut monsters, and it has a lot more animations behind it. Compared to some of the other bosses in the game, a giant featherless chicken might not have been the best option in terms of creepiness, so I can see why they cut it, but I don't know, if you put me in a dark room with this giant chicken, I'm gonna be looking for the fucking door. Some of the animations for the chicken are actually pretty funny too, as it looks like he's just getting laid out in a few of these, like you just clock this guy right in the chin. Someone needs to mod this big chicken guy back in to replace Incubus as the final boss, then that'll truly be the definitive Silent Hill 1 experience.
Manta ray.
EL in the game's files is actually of a manta ray sort of creature that looks like it's a combination of your typical manta ray and maybe like a dolphin's face or something. Whatever the case is, this is a dangerous ass manta ray, alright? Not only can he sting you with his barbed tail, he can also bite the player with his newfound mouth. I'm not sure if this thing was actually going to appear in any water segments in the game, or if these things would just be floating around a dark corner waiting to catch the player lacking or something. Some people online suggest there might be a cut level that housed some of these creatures, like a cut zoo level or something, but this is purely speculation and nothing's ever been confirmed about this. Listen, in or out of water, I don't want to be messing with this thing, alright? I might just get Irwin, dude. Rest in peace, big man. I still haven't accepted it all these years later, bro.
Right.
How the fuck did you get got with a 5 manta ray, dude? The frog is one of the more visually disturbing of these cut enemies, as it appears super surreal and almost grotesque in a weird way. Obviously there's no guts hanging out of this thing, but look at it. What the hell? A frog is the closest thing you could describe this thing as being, but if I ever saw a frog like this walking in the rain, I'd book it the other way as fast as I fucking could. It sucks for this guy, because instead of turning into Godzilla from the radiation he was clearly exposed to, he turned into a frog without a face and bigger limbs. Sick, dude. When do I get my fire breath, right? In reality, though, I really don't like how this thing squirms in its animations, and just the idea of this thing stalking you throughout the game creeps me the hell out. Even the way it squirms around on the ground after I assume the player would have attacked it, it looks like a child having a temper tantrum, but instead it's a large amphibious blob. Jesus Christ, what's going on? MKY in the code is likely short for monkey, as that's the closest thing people have connected this thing to in relation to its file name anyway. The large monkey creature is oddly on 4 legs as it walks through its animations, making it resemble a hairless bear or wolf or something, at least to me. It's also equipped with large sharp claws on its front 2 legs, along with a pretty fierce snout. I haven't seen a monkey like this before. Holy shit. What kind of fucked up monkeys do you guys have? The animations show just how fast this thing could move too, as it seemingly could gallop towards a player, which I can only imagine is as terrifying as I'm picturing it right now. Not only that, but it has animations where it appears it would have been hit out of its running animation, assuming the player was meant to attack the creature whilst it was charging at them. Fuck that, dude. I'm not doing that. I'll wait for it to fucking catch a breath. It also has a few other idle animations and dying animations, and assuming this was just a standard creature and not a boss, I gotta say, I think it would have been really effective and impactful as a standard enemy. Could you imagine a pack of these guys rolling up on you? It would have taken the fear people had from the first Resident Evil zombie dog jump scare and upped it to a whole other level. Just imagine this thing charging at you down a dark alley at night and was clearing 5 blocks in 10 seconds. I'm all good, dude. Monkey on the bed. He jumped off and bumped his head. Good. I hope he fucking died.
Oh my god.
The ostrich is a large, fleshy, bulbous creature that only slightly resembles an ostrich in stature. It's kitted out with tall, skinny legs and bulbous, fleshy tumors making up its body. Its animation set is pretty standard for a monster like this, with walking animations and even a jumping animation where it appears to be lunging towards the player. It kind of reminds me of a really dark version of another cut enemy from another game, Super Mario Sunshine, known as Hinokori, but maybe I'm just trying to ground this enemy a bit, because what is actually going on in this design? All I gotta say is Espresso from Donkey Kong Country has seen a bit of better days, in my opinion. The last of the notable cut enemies is the snake, and this one, similarly to the chicken and butterfly, actually resembles the real-life animal somewhat. The snake is still pretty creepy and even a little uncanny, as it's kind of built. It feels like you were gonna go make a Play-Doh snake and you didn't stretch the dough out all the way, so you just have this chode of a snake left over. I think this was done to make it more unnerving, and I think it achieves this. Usually if you want to make a snake in a game more scary, you make them larger than life, right? But they decided to compact this little guy, and the result is definitely creepy to say the least. Don't get me wrong. Its tongue is even part of the model itself, so it's always out looking like a gross tentacle coming out of the snake's head or something. Ew. If you have a fear of snakes, then I don't need to say anymore, right? This guy would have been creepy as hell in the game. Overall, I can definitely see why these were cut to make room for the other enemies in the game, as these were probably the most tame in terms of creepy designs, but still looking at them outside of the context of the game, they're definitely creepy as fuck. There's just a certain style with all these Silent Hill enemies you have, and they're unmatched in my opinion, at least for back then. Souls games are kind of like Silent Hill in a way, in terms of enemy design, where they have very unique enemy designs that make you feel like you're playing a Souls game or a Silent Hill game, you know? These games are kind of easy hitters to find creepy content that didn't make it into the final game because, you know, the surrounding games also fucked up. In Dark Souls 3, there are a few boss battles that are optional, and you can choose to go up against the boss known as Osiris if you want to achieve the End of Fire ending, but if you're just casually playing through the game, Osiris is considered one of the optional bosses in the game. So chances are you might not even run into this guy if you're kind of just mainlining the game, and honestly, after hearing about his story, you might want to just avoid him altogether. Osiris is one of the most vocal bosses in the game, often speaking about his blindness or of his son Ocelot. Ocelot is presumably invisible throughout the fight and is being cradled by Osiris, all while fighting the player. Hey, I would have put the kid down if I were him, but who knows, he might just be crazy and Ocelot isn't even in his arms in the first place. Throughout the battle, you'll hear a baby crying in the background and Osiris constantly asking Ocelot to reveal himself, so perhaps he's actually there, but just literally invisible. Halfway through the battle, Osiris realizes he's not getting anywhere with the dead weight of invisible Ocelot and does this. Yeah, Dad of the Year goes to this Osiris guy without a doubt. Holy shit. Listen, if my dad had just chucked me at the ground full force when I was 2, I'd make sure to bring him a #1 dad mug from the afterlife. For sure, dude. Yeah, this is pretty dark, especially if you consider that there's a chance Ocelot was actually there in his hands and just invisible and met this grisly demise. Jesus, I'd rather be the dude whose dad ate him. For a while, it was speculated that a disturbing piece of audio was cut from this segment as well, but according to the user Midris in Thard on Reddit, it can still be heard in the game, just unlikely that a lot of people heard it during their playthroughs. I'll play the audio right here, and I must warn it's pretty disturbing, so be warned about that.
Oh my god.
And so it seemed the audio clip was cut from the final game due to, well, it's pretty obvious. I mean, that's just messed up. But OP went on to explain, a lot of people have theorized that all these squishing sounds weren't intended to be played with the rest of it in the game. Rather, it was simply stored in the same sound file for convenience, and when data miners found the file, they assumed it was meant to be played all at once, so you get the disturbing sound bite you have. I'm relatively sure only the initial blood-curdling cry of terror and the first crunch play in the game. He then explains that during the halfway segment where Osiris smashes Ocelot into the ground, that there is actually an empty dialogue box that blocks the next audio segment that would play this audio, as most players are either concentrated on dodging the boss or watching this third-degree murder take place in front of their eyes, and thus they're not clicking through the dialogue boxes in order to hear it in time. I'm also unsure if this Reddit user's claims have been backed up, as there was no video, just the text, and I'm not going to painstakingly make my way to Osiris in Dark Souls 3 to fact check the guys, but it seems to check out for me. Maybe if anyone has tested this themselves, you can leave it in the comments and let us know. Listen, cut content or not, the baby crying followed by the large squishing sound is enough to devastate anyone listening to it. It'll ruin your damn day. Yeah. This isn't even the true cut part either, as in alpha versions of the game, the boss battle can be seen in its original form, with Ocelot being present in Osiris's hands. No. The model is of a sickly looking infant who's clearly not doing super great here, or he's just sleeping or something, you know, let's stay positive here. So it appeared that they simply made this boss battle a little bit too dark, I'll say that, with the audio and visual confirmation that Osiris just crushes his own son in an attempt to win the fight. So then they decided at the last minute to go in and remove the model of Ocelot and try to retcon the decision of making Osiris call out to Ocelot to reveal himself throughout the fight, i.e. he's invisible in his hands. So it censors it a little bit, but therefore he's still technically in his hand, and it's still just as fucked up, we just can't see it in full detail. I assume not a lot of ideas are shot down for being too disturbing for these games, because look at them, I mean, some of the backstories and side quests are super fucked up in their own right. So this is just proof as to how fucked up this cut moment from Dark Souls 3 was. I mean, we didn't need proof, but holy shit.
Damn, man.
The Danganronpa games are creepy and unnerving in their own ways. You really have to invest yourself in the story to get these feelings, but these games will have you on the edge of your seat, if nothing else. The first game is great at introducing the world while keeping it contained inside of school environment. It all feels very claustrophobic, I'll say. If you're a fan of the Phoenix Wright games and you haven't played Danganronpa, it's more like a dark take on those games with more supernatural elements. Arguably the most iconic thing from these games is the cute demonic teddy bear known as Monokuma. He acts similarly to Jigsaw in the Saw movies, not directly being the main villain, but being controlled by them, acting as sort of a puppet for the overall mastermind's plans to execute. Originally, the design of Monokuma could have been much different from what we know today. While he's not the creepiest thing ever in his teddy bear form, there are certain scenes where he comes off as creepy, especially when he's carrying out these executions on the characters in the game. Now just imagine that instead of a fluffy cute teddy bear, instead he was a human character that was cut down the middle Two-Face style and revealing half his body as fleshy organs and tissue. The closest thing this could relate to is those science classroom diagrams of the human body, where half is skinned up and the other half is revealing the inside of the human body. All fine for a high school science classroom, right? But in the context of Danganronpa, this design would have been too much, man. Too much. You went too far. The game is already shrouded in darkness and death, and if this guy was carrying all of this out, I don't know, it would be much more of a horror game in my eyes then. I'm unsure if this design just didn't fit their needs for the character of Monokuma, or if it was actually just removed for being too disturbing. Regardless, I share the idea of many Danganronpa fans and the fact that we got lucky to get the cute bear design in the final game and not this fucked up wannabe human guy. I hate how gleeful he looks too, man. Like, buddy, half your body is gone. I guess you could say he's all right now.
Thinner Mickey?
I've talked about the
like
creepy pre-release content for Epic Mickey before on the channel, in which concept art reveals that the game in its original state was going to be a much darker experience.
Whoa.
Or at least that's what you would glean from the concept art looking at them. But in reality, it was made in order to shock the Disney executives who would greenlight the game, so much so the more tame concepts they actually wanted to implement in the game wouldn't be seen as dark as the shock content they initially showed through their concept pieces. It really does make me want a horror-themed Mickey Mouse game where they play around with more ideas from these concept images, making a true M for mature horror Mickey Mouse experience. Even though the developers didn't want to make the game as dark as the concept art portrayed, they still had some scrapped ideas that would have made for an interesting and pretty unnerving time in my opinion. A concept the developers were playing with early on in the development of Epic Mickey was a good and evil system we can see in games like Infamous or Red Dead's Honor system. In the game, Mickey has the choice of using paint thinner on enemies throughout his adventure, and this is a pretty powerful attack as most of the enemies are made up of paint, so when you really break it down, the paint thinner probably acts like an acid attack in this world, so Mickey is just going around acid attacking everyone, which is pretty dark in its own right. But the developers kind of backed this up by the fact if you use too much paint thinner throughout your adventure, that Mickey Mouse himself would start to melt away from the overexposure to the thinner, revealing a much creepier version of Mickey Mouse. This version shows melted paint sloughing off of Mickey, which can pretty much be considered his skin at this point, revealing a demonic version of Mickey underneath, i.e. the evil Mickey you had been building this entire game.
Whoa.
Listen, that's pretty messed up, but it would have also been really cool to see a consequence system like this present in Epic Mickey. It would have definitely made some players second guess using paint thinner as much throughout their adventure to dodge the demonic Mickey model, who in concept art is scary enough, but in the actual game would have been pretty interesting to see what he would have looked like. The idea of Mickey being dissolved himself by the thinner was scrapped for a more tame, evil Mickey known as Scrapper Mickey, But ultimately, this whole idea was unfounded, and thus the whole concept was cut from the game, ultimately. If they ever made a third game in the series, I'd love to see them take a darker tone overall and try out some of these really unique concepts again. But I can see why they were pretty wary of it in the first place. It is Disney we're talking about here. Plus, it's Mickey Mouse, their golden child. That'd be like if Nintendo made third-degree burn Mario if you used too many fire flowers or something. It would have been too much for a kid's game, but damn if this isn't a really cool idea. Well, that'll do it for today's video. Let me know what you thought about it in the comments down below. Thanks for getting us past 20k subs. I think we're right past 22 right now, which is fucking crazy. That's insane, and it's still going up, so please, if you would consider subscribing if you liked the video, it'd mean a lot to you, boy. If you'd like to see another part of this, let me know in the comments as well, or simply like the video, and that'll let me know as well. Thanks for all the support recently, and look forward to some more cool content coming in the future. Thanks for watching. Peace.
Before Steven Spielberg would direct the iconic blockbuster, Michael Crichton's original Jurassic Park novel had many terrifying and violent scenes that would be cut from the film, never to be shown to the public.
He stepped on the accelerator and hunched forward over the steering wheel, peering through the rain-slashed windshield as he drove the Jeep down the narrow road. He was driving fast, too fast, but he had to keep to his timetable. Soon, he should be able to see the beach and the ocean off to his left. If Dogson's boat wasn't waiting for him at the east dock when Nedry got there, the whole plan would be ruined. Nedry couldn't wait very long, or he'd be missed back at the control room. The whole idea behind the plan was that he could drive to the east dock, drop off the embryos, and be back in a few minutes before anyone noticed. It was a good plan, a clever plan. Nedry had worked on it carefully, refining every detail. This plan was going to make him $1.5 million, 1.5 meg. That was 10 years of income and a single tax-free shot, and it was going to change his life. Nedry had been damn careful, even to the point of making Dogson meet him in San Francisco airport at the last minute with an excuse about wanting to see the money. Actually, Nedry just wanted to record his conversation with Dogson and mention him by name on the tape, just so that Dogson wouldn't forget he owed the rest of the money. Nedry was including a copy of the tape with the embryos. In short, Nedry had thought of everything, except this damn storm. Where was the damn dock? He was driving fast and he'd already been gone 5 minutes. He should have reached the east dock by now. Had he taken a wrong turn? He didn't think so. He hadn't seen any forks in the road at all. Then where was the dock? Only feet away from the concrete barrier, Nedry sighed in relief. He'd obviously taken a wrong turn somewhere. He could retrace his steps, but that would take too long. He'd better try and find out where the hell he was. The river? He was at the Jungle River? Damn, he thought. At the river where? The river ran for miles through the island. He looked at his watch. 7 minutes gone.
You have a problem, Dennis.
Time had run out. There wasn't a choice anymore. He had to abandon his original plan.
Nedry paused. That didn't really sound like an owl. It sounded like something big. Something near. A big dinosaur. Get out of here. It was already there. spit. The animal had spit on him. Jesus, it was disgusting. Nedry felt a sudden excruciating pain in his eyes. He felt the foam dripping down his face. The dinosaur had spit in his eyes. Nedry knew the animal was coming closer, and despite the pain, he forced his eyes open, but he still couldn't see anything. He was blind. The animal was moving closer now. He could feel it moving closer, but he couldn't see it. He couldn't see, and his terror was extreme.
Oh, this is disgusting.
The animal had torn him open. His guts had fallen out.
Ugh, gross. No, do not look. And you don't need to see that. It's gross. What?
And now there was a new searing pain on both sides of his skull, and Dennis knew the animal had his head in its jaws. And with the horror of that realization, there came a final wish.
That it would all be ended soon.
Yep, it's over. It was something spooky. Yep, that's how the scene went in the book, guys. I might go ahead and call it. I've been live for a couple hours. Yeah, I think I'll go ahead and call it. I don't want to stay up too late. Well, let's see who's live. Shotgun. Damn. Well. Alright, we're gonna raid Kenji. So, yep. I'm probably going to just do the, Saturday and Sunday shows until I get my main PC back, and we'll get back into doing gaming streams and all, and more gaming videos on the YouTube. So, yeah, thanks for watching this Spooky Sunday tonight. Hope it entertained you. Love you guys, and I'll see y'all in the next one. Bye.